This morning, I want to talk about resilience, which is the physical, emotional, cognitive, and spiritual skill that allows us to keep on keeping on, living our life fully through all of the changes and disasters and stresses and illnesses and losses of our lives. We've had more than our share lately. The past 2 years have been, it seems, just one thing after another. Pandemic, politics, police, storms and fires, lies and insurrection, and then more pandemic, more lies, more fires. The inability of our fellow Americans to do what is right for themselves and their neighbors and their nation by getting a couple of shots and maybe feeling poorly for a day feels like a terrible predictor of our future society and future world. It's all very depressing. But here I am, and here you are, worshiping together on a platform most of us had not even heard of and would have rejected as a poor substitute if we had been asked 2 years ago. And I hope that in spite of all the bad news, the conflicting advice, the privations, you realize just how resilient you have been. Being resilient doesn't mean being upbeat and ready for anything with a smile all the time. Not at all. It means rather coping most of the time, and sometimes while fighting a bad mood, but still living, growing, and learning. A year ago, May, just as we started to realize how long and slow ending the crisis was going to be, and I started wondering just how much resilience I was going to have to cope with it all, my dog Mosby had a crisis, and I got to watch how he coped. I was inspired, and I want to share his story and all the things he reminded me of with you. So, this is Mosby. Isn't he cute? And notice the attitude? Mosby thinks his job in life is to protect his family from all threats. For instance, pickup trucks, skateboards, bicycles, and especially any member of that extremely dangerous species, canine. It makes peaceable walking around the neighborhood a challenge. So Mosby and I walk early in the morning, and we installed a doggy door for him so that he can have quality outside time and the safety and privacy of our small walled backyard. Well, one morning, I discovered him in our nice, safe backyard with blood all over his face. The vet said it was probably a raccoon he had tangled with, and she commented that he was lucky to have come out of it with just a slashed face. She brought him back to me in the car with a cleaned up face, antibiotics, and a cone. Want to see? Oh, poor Mosby. All he was doing was trying to protect his family. Well, I'd heard plenty of jokes about dogs and cones, but watching a dog get accustomed to a cone, oh my goodness, it is pathetic. They bump into everything, which jerks their heads. They have to learn how to get at their food and their water in a new way. They can't use their doggy door. They can't groom themselves or scratch their ears. They can go on walks, but their senses of sight and hearing and smell are all changed. And if they are a dog of short stature, like my little Mosby, their necks get very tired. But if they droop even a little, their cone catches on the ground and trips them up. A cone, in other words, is a major adversity for a dog. Totally puts masks to shame. And it was well worth all the anger and frustration which Mosby could throw at it, which he did at first. He tried over and over to escape all these changes by charging out his now too small doggy door. That's doggy denial. He growled at us when we tried to help. Doggy displaced anger. He curled up in his bed and stared at us with his big eyes. Doggy depression. Denial, displaced anger, depression, those are three enemies of resilience. I bet they sound familiar. And oh gosh, we did feel sorry for him. We pampered him and we fed him his favorite fancy food from a spoon while he alternately moped and tried and failed to do things the old way. Poor little guy. Lots of changes to cope with, lots of learning to do, and his nose probably still hurt too. We went to bed with heavy hearts that night. But the next morning, cone and all, Mosby was ready for his walk, insistent even. So I leashed him up and off we went. And from that moment on, in spite of all the bumps and annoyances, the changes and aggravations, which went on for a whole week, Mosby, by gosh, led his life. And he's fine now. Material objects, like elastic, show resilience when they snap back to their original shape after they've been stressed by stretching. This is simple mechanical resilience, and it's very important. A month or so back, when I hauled out the cloth masks I'd stashed away, I found that their elastic, which was very resilient during pandemic phase 1, was, well, flabby. I could relate. I did not feel quite as snappy about starting in with the masks again either. However, with no resilience, the old elastic was just not doing the job anymore. After a few days of procrastinating due to my own lack of snapback, I made some new ones. Living beings are more complex than elastic bands, of course, and snapback isn't all there is to our resilience. In our case, resilience is not just going back to the old normal. It's learning to cope with the new normal. Mosby's resilience showed not only when he got his energy back and his face began to heal, but when he learned new things, to manipulate his cone so that he could get at his food and water bowls, to not try to go out his doggy door, to let me know when he wanted to go outside or to scratch his ears. We know that we're showing resilience in the face of adversity when we are learning about the new situation and its demands, learning the new skills we need to cope, or learning how to keep our spirits up in hard times. What did you learn during the pandemic? Most of you learned to Zoom. That's resilience. Here's another way Mosby showed resilience. In spite of what must have been a sudden, baffling, and very annoying set of changes in his life, he went right on living it. Eager for his walk in spite of not being able to hear or see quite right. Eager for his food, even if he had to relearn how to get it. Eager for affection, and even eager to get out in the backyard and bark at his canine neighbors. Of course, Mosby's a dog, and dogs specialize in living in the moment. They do not tax themselves with worries about things to come, or how things have changed, or how they are going to live. One of the ongoing spiritual lessons of our pets is observing this wholehearted way of living. We humans don't come to that naturally. What we come to naturally is anxiety, worry about what will happen next, anger about what should be and isn't, and dissatisfaction about what is. That inner restlessness and ability to plan, that's sort of the essence of who we are, uncomfortable as it is. That's what sets us apart from the dogs, and that's why the dogs rely upon us totally to shop for their food and get them to the vet and stay stocked up on poop bags, right? It's our real purpose in life, that planning, along with scratching their ears. It's what we're good at. But if anticipating, worried, and being dissatisfied is the only thing we're good at, we may have a lot of purpose in our lives, but we'll have precious little joy. We have to learn then to be like our dogs when it's appropriate. We need poets to remind us, as Mary Oliver does, that the past is the past and the present is where your life is. So come to the pond or the river of your imagination. or the harbor of your longing, and put your lips to the world and live your life. How did you live your life during pandemic phase 1? I myself reverted to type, it seems. I took a gig doing interim ministry for a congregation in Philadelphia, and now here I am in Colorado Springs. But I also tried out personal training as an alternative to the group exercise I had heretofore found worked best for me, and I became addicted to jigsaw puzzles. You have to be living in the moment to focus your mind on those tiny pieces. Last spring, I worked as a volunteer usher at one of the city's vaccination centers, and I'm about to start doing that again. And what fun it was. Well, I bet you did those sorts of things. You lived your life in spite of masks and lockdowns, worries, and unwelcome restrictions. Your dog would be so proud. And most of you have been through plenty in your lives. Crises, change, illness, relationship and work issues, a firing maybe, addiction issues, other things. You've learned a thing or two. And you know that your ancestors went through even worse and survived and passed on some good genes to you. So let's ask ourselves how we can nurture that resilience that we already have so that we can move in good health from COVID-19 and be better prepared for what comes next in our lives. Now, my Mosby didn't give a single thought to how he could increase his resilience during his cone days. That's a pretty human question to ask. So let's ask it. Well, first, to be resilient, you need some basic habits of mental and physical health. You know, enough sleep, exercise, good food, social interaction, care with the chemicals we so easily become dependent on. You need to go on your morning walk every day, or whatever your version of exercise is. And if you are a little Yorkie who must suddenly carry around a big cone, it's good to start with a strong neck, even if it now has to get stronger. So take care of your health, physical and mental. The second set of habits that promote resilience are habits of clear, logical thinking, as well as heartfelt emotional intelligence. It's hard to bounce back when you indulge in fuzzy cognition, from wishful thinking, conspiracy theories, to denial and willful cluelessness. Fuzzy thinking, I'm afraid, is more endemic than the pandemic these days, and that means that our own individual, group, and political good thinking are all the more critical. So resilience means checking our facts, remembering our logic, knowing the ways we are likely to try to kid ourselves, and conversing with others who look to finding the truth over being doctrinaire. Yay, Unitarian Universalists. Mosby's first reaction to his cone was to go on as if nothing had changed, or at least try. That was denial. It's one of the most powerful kinds of fuzzy thinking, human and animal. In denial mode, he tried repeatedly to escape out his doggy door, now too small for his increased diameter, with painful results. He was in no mood to pay any attention to me either, although I could have helped. Thinking he knows it all is a persistent cognitive bias of his, which I'm sorry to say he is completely unaware of. But you're smarter than that, right? Wisdom is knowing what you don't know and getting help when you need it. Intellectual honesty and facing the facts is, in the end, the key to finding solutions and learning what we need to learn in a new or stressful situation. That's no fun, but it's necessary. Being resilient, you see, does not mean you're going to feel great all the time. It means you will be able to tolerate, learn, and grow in spite of feeling bad. Want to hear that again? Being resilient does not mean you will feel great all the time. It means you will be able to tolerate, learn, and grow despite feeling bad. While your nose still hurts and your ears don't seem to work and you have to maneuver a strange new obstacle to get to your very own water dish, the way to keep your spirits up is to master a new situation. Learn something new. Figure it out. Make it work. Our nation has shown itself to be pretty much unable to feel bad. Its people have indulged themselves in all kinds of unproductive behavior. I'm inclined to think, frankly, that all the conspiracy theories and misinformation are being snapped up, not because people are stupid, but because they can't stand to feel bad anymore, and they need a justification for going on with their life the way it used to be. It's a particularly dangerous form of denial, allowing people to discount risks because they can't stand feeling bad one more day. Not knowing how to cope when you feel bad is a problem. And that's one thing we could be learning in this crisis, or any crisis. It's a matter of attending to our spiritual lives. Now, we use the word spiritual very broadly. Here's one definition. The spiritual part of our lives is our attention to meaning and cultivating a sense of mental and emotional calm. Want to hear that one again? The spiritual part of our lives is our attention to meaning and to cultivating a sense of mental and emotional calm. So, if somebody had clapped my head in a cone and wouldn't take it off, I would not be a happy camper. I would be disabled, and that would take adjusting to. Pain and problem. Mosby would understand. But if I wasn't careful, I would add to my own pain and problems with my own undisciplined mind. How dare they, I might fume. This is so unfair. I must have done something wrong to deserve this. What's the matter with me? Mosby knows nothing of such self-talk, but I do, and you probably do too. I have had to practice shutting down that kind of talk or talking back to it, which I learned to do in meditation and in therapy. I'm still subject to all the painful disappointments, disabilities, and changes that we all are, but I work hard at not making them worse by cultivating calm and reminding myself not to believe everything I find myself thinking. And I pay attention to the things that give meaning to my life, and I try to live out what I think as my purpose. I'm more complicated than my little dog, of course, who is not able to soothe his cone sufferings by remembering that he got them doing what he thinks of as his duty. But I can remember that. And believe me, during the week that I was up and down, letting him in and out of the backyard, scratching his ears and giving him pills, that was the worst. I reminded myself that he got into this condition earnestly, if misguidedly, protecting me from a predator who could have easily been 3 times his size. Remembering that love and that meaning was an important part of my spiritual life that week, as I remembered what is important to me. What's your end in life right now? Mine is to continue to be of service and to keep in touch, virtually if necessary, with my friends and loved ones. Hence, a little work, some computer gaming with my siblings and our children, some volunteer work for the city, another puzzle exchange. Let me know if you want in on that. I'll bring mine next time. And living as lightly on the earth as I can. What are your goals and ends? Mosby suffered unnecessarily because he couldn't remember that he got his cone trying to protect his family. No need for you to suffer that way. And by the way, institutions and societies and nations also experience resilience. And because they're made up of people, their resilience resembles the humankind. It's not only a matter of bouncing back, it's a matter of learning and growing and developing greater ability to face the future effectively. So a resilient congregation in these COVID phase 2 days, for instance, would be a congregation that was not clamoring to go back to the ways things have been, but rather a congregation asking, what have we learned? Who can we serve now? What's the purpose of this congregation, and how can we fulfill it in these current conditions? How do we keep the doors open in these strange days? I know you're that kind of resilient congregation, and I honor you for that. And I honor each of you. So far in your lives, each and every one of you, even those of you who feel very battered right now, have ridden the waves of life successfully and resiliently. With a little help from friends, from faith, from our basic habits of self-care, in part because we discipline ourselves to live out our values, think clearly, and cultivate peace in our minds and hearts so we don't make feeling bad any worse than it already is. We mostly manage to be resilient enough to ride even big waves of change that are a part of all that is our life. Blessings in this hard time. May you use it resiliently to heal, to learn, and to grow in wisdom and in spirit.